building a better Bay Area, moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC 7 News.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Z. You're watching Getting Answers live on ABC 7 and wherever you stream. We're asking experts your questions every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. Today, Silicon Valley Congressman Ro Khanna says big tech has divided Americans, increased the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and needs reform now. He's authored a new book and will be joining us to discuss possible solutions. Also, a new quilt exhibit in the Bay Area is a testament to the healing power of art. You'll meet the artist behind a quilt inspired by the historic Gee's Bend quilts and learn where you can see it for yourself. But first, the Oakland School Board voted last night to close or merge 11 schools. It comes after a public battle of the past few weeks and a long, contentious board meeting. Board member Mike Hutchinson fought against closing schools and said those voting for it just declared war against the community.
I hope you all are ready for the action you just unleashed. The lid's about to come off this city. And not only did that
recording stopped.
Just killed the Black reparations work. I don't even care if the recording stopped. You all have made one mistake way too many. And for y'all to throw Black reparations up in your mouth around this and close our schools and have the nerve to tell us you're doing this to help Black thriving students, you've lost your ever-loving mind.
A lot of passions on both sides of the issue, and joining us now to talk about what happens next is Alameda County's Superintendent of Schools, Leslie Monroe. Ms. Monroe, thanks for being here.
Hi, it's LK Monroe, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. My apologies, LK Monroe. Ms. Monroe, you're not on the Oakland School Board. I just want to make that clear. But you work with the board in your role overseeing schools in all of Alameda County. Do you support the tough decision made last night?
Let me give you just a little overview of what my role is with Oakland Unified. So you're correct. I am neither on the board nor am I the superintendent of Oakland Unified School District. My role with the board is that of fiscal and academic oversight. That is the role every county superintendent has in this state with the districts they oversee. And that is how I interact with the superintendent and the board. So in as much as these decisions were to make sure that Oakland has fiscal health and stability, that is how I interacted around these decisions.
Okay. I know you work with the different stakeholders, and look, as you've seen, there's so much community anger and sadness. And what board member Mike Hutchinson expressed, many others feel as well. In fact, I know in the past hour there was a news conference of community leaders reinforcing that point. This rancor, to you, does it reflect a lack of communication, collaboration, or is it those elements were there, but still you just can't avoid it?
I think that, you know, these decisions are some of the hardest decisions, if not the hardest decision a district could possibly make. It is closing schools. There is no scenario by which this is something that communities don't experience loss. Community schools, neighborhood schools are an essential part of any community's identity and hub. So it's not an easy decision, and the board has been looking to make this decision. This has been before the board over the last few decades, the right number of schools for Oakland. So the pushback is to be expected, and parents continue to want to have answers. And I think that that's exactly where Oakland needs to be right now, is being very clear about next steps and clear answers for parents. What is happening next? If my school is closing next year, what should I expect right now?
Right. I mean, I do want this to be forward-looking and talk about that. So now that the kids will be displaced, how can we ensure, or what is your plan in terms of working with the school board to make sure that those kids, for example, get priority or somehow get an even better education or opportunities, or get the support they need, you know, because losing that community hub is such a big deal. What can you do?
So for me, again, I work with the district superintendents. I work with the board on certain issues, but mostly with the superintendent and the team at Oakland Unified, who last night were very clear that they are going to be deploying social emotional learning staff, social emotional learning teams that they're going to be opening as of today, welcoming centers so that families can get questions answered. There are a number of strategies that they're going to be employing to make sure that families and students have the support that they need. And yet, and still, I cannot say enough that this is a challenging situation, and this is a moment that the district will need to step up to in very clear and intentional ways to wrap around their families.
All right, I think one thing that would give some families closure, is if they could understand, were other options exhausted? Like, I think everybody knows that the district has been losing students over the last 20 years. They've lost 15,000 students. That's $150 million a year from the state gone. And perhaps they needed to consolidate. But in terms of just discussing other things that they can cut, administrative costs, or maybe certain programs that are no longer needed. I mean, did all that happen? Was that made clear? Was that dissected and shared with everybody?
Yes. So the board for many years, but certainly in this past year, has been looking at where they will be decreasing their expenditures. So as a county superintendent, I asked that the board come up with what I call budget balancing solutions, which means you need to decide in your community and in your district how you're going to close this fiscal shortfall. And they have looked at personnel, they have looked at programs, they have looked at the ability to monetize particular facilities that are being underutilized. They have looked at a number of things, and closing schools was one of those options. And it's not the sole option. And at different times, they have set that decision to the side in favor of other budget balancing solutions. Mm-hmm. That's a local decision. My job is to make sure that whatever is committed to and decided upon gets walked out. Mm-hmm.
I understand. And as part of your job, too, you're helping these districts stay solvent to stave off a state takeover, for example, which nobody wants to lose that kind of control, right? I want to just quickly throw up that graphic of the 11 schools that we're talking about that will either be closing or merging. And as we look at these, I should just point out, it seems like data shows 78% of the population at these schools, on average, are Black or Hispanic, and less than 20% are white or Asian. When people look at that, they go, certain people are bearing a bigger share or a bigger burden of the closures. Is this because those areas we're seeing the larger population declines, or are there other factors that are there that you can explain to people that maybe they don't see?
Yeah, it is true that the majority of the schools exist in our Black and Brown communities. That's about 21% African American, about 15% Latinx to get to that around 70%. So those communities have schools that are, by the district's measures, under-enrolled, and that families in those communities are not choosing those schools at a high rate. And that does not mean that they're any less valued by those families and the students who attend those schools. However, when the district is looking at how best to get high quality learning experiences in the midst of an unprecedented staffing shortage, and looking at shrinking resources, and looking at how to have high quality learning opportunities available to all students, and particularly students of color. Some of these difficult decisions are the decisions they're making.
Yeah. Difficult trade-offs either way. Thanks for breaking down some of the factors for us. Before I let you go, I want to shift gears and just ask you real quickly about the school mask mandate. As you know, next week the state will lift its overall mask mandate. That doesn't apply to schools. But what's your feeling? I assume you're at the table with the state in terms of when it should be lifted for schools.
Yes. So one of the roles I serve currently is the president of the organization of the 58 county superintendents. And these are conversations we're having frequently. And when you sit in that space, you absolutely understand and appreciate what a diverse state we live in and how there are multiple perspectives about masking and what will work best in schools. Alameda County school leaders feel by and large that whatever we can do to ensure that multiple layers are in place is good. We know with this current variant that it's highly transmissible and that there's been a habit formed of mask wearing that we definitely want to lean into to ensure safety for as long as we possibly can. While we have every indication that our public health department will align with the state, we know that schools are separate, and so we will see where the state lands on the school mandate. But again, they're just depending on what county in the state you're in, there are very different opinions about the timing of the release of the mask mandate.
That is so very true. L.K. Monroe, Superintendent of Schools in Alameda County, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And we'll be right back with Congressman Ro Khanna. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. I'll be back in a couple minutes with Congressman Ro Khanna. Welcome back. We're going to go with this story first. Overwhelming support from the Bay Area's biggest tech companies and leaders launched Ro Khanna's congressional career. But the progressive representative, whose district includes the Silicon Valley, now believes that too much wealth and power is concentrated in the hands of the tech elite, and something needs to change. His new book was released this month. It is called Dignity in a Digital Age: Making Tech Work for All of Us. Joining us now to talk about the issue and potential solutions now is Congressman and author Ro Khanna. Congressman Khanna, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me back on.
Oh, absolutely. Congratulations. Is this your first book, by the way?
It's my second, but it's a much better one than my first, so I'm proud of it.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Look, one of the book's central ideas is that big tech is broken, that it's not working for the majority of people. How so? How do you see it as not working, and who is it not working for?
Well, we have $11 trillion of market cap in the Bay Area, much in my district, and that's gone up 40% during the pandemic. Young kids in my district are very optimistic about the future. But for many Americans, globalization, the new economy, has meant job loss. It's meant deindustrialization. it's meant kids having to buy a one-way ticket out of their hometowns. And so what I'm saying is we've got to decentralize the opportunities of the modern economy to rural America, to Black and brown communities. You can't have 25 million digital jobs just concentrated in a handful of big cities. You've got to give other communities the opportunity for prosperity, and that will also increase productivity, and it'll put less strain on the housing market in our area.
Not to mention the traffic, the freeways, right? Environmental issues, the creation of jobs and wealth, obviously good for a region. But you're right. I mean, it would be nice if it were spread out. And there's certainly places, small towns that could benefit from that. So are you talking about red states, red counties necessarily? I wonder if this is also a political move for Democrats to be able to make inroads in those communities?
Well, no, but both. I mean, certainly in rural America, this is a place that can help link the coastal prosperity to a revitalization in those communities. And in certain states in the Midwest, you look at Intel in my district, terrific investment of $20 billion in New Albany, Ohio, near Columbus, 3,000 manufacturing jobs, 7,000 construction jobs. I talked to the CEO last week. He's talking about a new nationalism, a new economic pride and enthusiasm there. But we also have to talk about Black communities and Latino communities. Many of them have been excluded from modern wealth generation in Silicon Valley. I would like the president to announce a goal of 1 million new African-American by 2025 in digital jobs, paying twice as much as the median average. And that's achievable with partnerships with HBCUs.
Okay. That's one path. How else could government, and by government I mean you folks, incentivize or require tech companies to bring those jobs to America's small towns?
Well, one thing we could do is pass the Competes Act, the Innovation Act. We passed it in the House, passed it in the Senate. We just have to reconcile it, get it to the president's desk, and it would provide grants for creating semiconductor manufacturing in the United States, make things in the United States again, the production. The other thing we could do is have government invest in the land-grant universities to make them digital grant universities. The land-grant university prepared us for the Industrial Revolution. Now it should not only prepare us for industry and agriculture, but also for the tech jobs, which are in every sector. Those are two ways. And then we should incentivize companies to hire people from rural communities, from Black and brown communities, if they seek federal contracts in technology.
Okay. Let's also talk about big tech's access and control of our data, an increasing issue here. I got to tell you, I recently went on Facebook and unchecked some 30 boxes of settings that I only discovered recently. What can we do there to reform that?
Well, that's exactly the problem. That's why I say there has to be an Internet Bill of Rights, where the default should be that none of your data is being taken. Right now, the default is that your data is being taken and you have to have the obligation to uncheck the boxes. There should be a clear guideline saying your data is not going to be taken. Tell us what you want your data to be used for. Now, if you want to use for to make sure that you see the local pizza place, that makes sense. Or you may want to see certain book recommendations or movie recommendations. But you should be able to restrict the use of that data. And if we do that, I think it would solve a fair amount of issues on these platforms.
Do you think more hasn't been done already because to some extent Congress just doesn't understand tech issues?
I think there is a lack of understanding and familiarity, and it's not that we need software engineers or techies in Congress, though of course more people with technical background helps.
Yeah.
It's that we need people who've driven before to make rules for the road, and similarly we need people to actually go on these social media sites themselves, not just with staff, to know how to operate an Instagram account, to know what a Coinbase wallet is or what a Meta wallet is, so they understand basics in cryptocurrency, just to have the basic experience that millions of Americans have, and then they'll be better able to regulate it.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of these big social media companies are in your district, and I'm sure you've had meetings with them in talks. Is it your sense that they're starting to feel like they should shoulder more of the responsibility to cultivate a thriving democracy and not consider primarily only financial interests?
Well, that's the holy grail. I think they're starting to realize that just having these sites and having collecting data and having everyone talk in an absolute defense of hiding behind the First Amendment is not enough, that it's fueled misinformation, that it's fueled rumors and conspiracy theories, fueled things like QAnon, that we absolutely first need regulation. We can't just rely on their goodwill. We need antitrust regulation to make sure there are many different sites. Look, there are many different television stations. It's not just ABC. There should be a number of choices for social media. We need privacy regulation. We need consumer safety regulation. But then we also need them to develop ethics. I mean, you're at ABC, you care about the impact your stories are having on the community. We need these social media sites to think of themselves as media companies, as having an impact on our democracy, and have a set of ethics about what content they think will further that.
Well, we thank you for noting that we do care very much about ethics and our role here at ABC7. I thank you also for your time. Dignity in a Digital Age by Congressman Ro Khanna. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks so much for having me on. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. All right, coming up next, an organization is supporting children living with cancer through the healing power of art. The Kids in Art Foundation is joining us to share a really exciting new exhibit. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Great conversation. You've got to watch this next segment. Taking a short break. Be right back.
Back in 7, 6, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1.
A Bay Area nonprofit, Kids in Art Foundation, has been holding art workshops for kids battling cancer for over a decade. Its latest project is one that pays tribute to the pioneering quilters of Gee's Bend, Alabama, where Black women have been making quilts out of scrap fabric for generations. Coming Together, a quilt for healing, is on display to the public beginning tomorrow at the San Jose Quilt Museum. And joining us now to talk about the exhibit is the lead artist, Caroline Roberts, artist Sarah Carlson, who is also a brain tumor survivor, and Sarah's mother, Jean, who's not too far away. Thanks for joining us, ladies.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline, I'll start with you. This quilt came out of a recent quilt workshop you offered as part of Kids in Art. What does the foundation do?
The foundation is a nonprofit organization that brings the healing power of art to children and families facing childhood cancer. Part of our programs is a monthly online workshop, and the quilt project was one of those.
I see, right. There's so many different kinds of workshops, and pre-pandemic, I know there were also ones in person, and everyone who participates derives such joy from it. Caroline, but let's talk about this. These quilts, and we have video, I think, of the quilt made of beautiful squares made by artists like you know, folks all over in the style of the famous Gee's Bend quilts. For those who are unfamiliar, what is the history there?
Well, well, the history, we were very, very fortunate at the workshop because we had a guest, Tangela Erbry, and she is the author of a children's book called Pearl and Her G's Ben's Quilts. And she was also, we also had her aunt, Mary, join us. And her Aunt Mary was actually a G's Bend quilter. Oh. So we got to hear about the history and the stories around that, where the quilters came together as a community and made these beautiful, beautiful quilts from scraps around their homes. And these quilts are now, considered works of art and are actually displayed in museums all over the world.
All right. Well,
so we were very fortunate to have them as our guests.
Yes, absolutely. And so the result is a beautiful quilt that you all made. Sarah, you're the artist of one of those squares. Which one was yours? Was it the heart?
I believe I made several. Do you remember, Carolyn?
Sarah, you very kindly, at the workshop, we invited the participants to return a mini quilt to us so that we could create this one large community quilt. And Sarah very kindly sent 3 back.
Wow. Well, look, Sarah, I'm sure it was fun for you making it and rewarding. I wonder if you or your mom, Jean, want to talk about, as you were fighting brain cancer, such a tough time, what did engaging in artwork and making a quilt do for you? How did that make you feel, and did that help you?
Yeah, well, just in general, Kids in Art has been great for me I've always loved art, and but because of my treatment and the damage to my brain, sometimes it's hard for me to get started and get going on a project by myself. So the fact that Kids in Art has the wonderful projects
that you can take part in. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, Sarah. Let's continue this conversation on Facebook Live because we're out of time on air. But this is on display at the San Jose Quilt Museum, and I hope you'll check it out. Be right back.
In commercial break.
All right, we are still talking on Facebook Live. We're no longer on TV, but we have a couple minutes. And so, Sarah, I want to give you the chance to finish up in terms of talking about how, how it made you feel and how, wonderful it was for you to make these quilts.
Yeah. I'm having a little bit of trouble remembering exactly.
Oh, that's okay. That's totally fine. It was fun, right? It was.
But it was really fun, and being able to put the different textures and colors together,
it was. Are you going to go see the finished product, Sarah? Because now your squares have been woven into this bigger quilt, and it's at the museum. Are you going to go check it out?
I'll have to see. I think we might take a trip down there. Yeah. Okay.
And Caroline, can you talk about the cost and how long the exhibit will be, running?
The quilt will be on display from tomorrow, 10th of February, until July the 3rd. So there's lots of time to be able to go and view it. And it's part of their it's alongside their other exhibitions as well.
Okay, and so, I know the fees are, it's very reasonable, like the admission to their museum. But Caroline, if families battling cancer want to get involved with Kids in Art, or artists such as yourself who want to volunteer and lead a workshop, or if donors want to support Kids in Art's work, how can they do so?
Yes, well,
where should they
go?
The
best way is to go to our website, kidsinart.org. That just has a wealth of information and has ways to support us.
Okay.
We send art kits to the hospitals, and they cost $25 each.
Okay. Well, so I can't support you enough. You do wonderful work. Kidsinart.org is the website. I hope everybody will check it out. Thank you so much, Sarah and Caroline.
Thank you for your
And thank you so much for joining us today on this interactive show, Getting Answers. We'll be here every weekday at 3 on air and on live stream answering your questions. World News Tonight is coming up next, and I'll see you back here at 4.